If you think you've heard every shocking case out there, think again. Subscribe before the next truth they buried goes missing too. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. A neighbor on Emerson Drive reported screaming, like someone being pulled apart. By 3:05, 2 patrol units were on scene, engines idling in the mist that hung over the cul-de-sac. The house in question? A beige 2-story with manicured hedges and a white mailbox. Looked perfectly ordinary. But when Officer Ray Delgado reached the front porch, he saw the door was ajar, and something was dripping from the doorknob. Blood. Thick, dark, recent. Inside, the air was heavy with the sterile scent of bleach. No lights, no movement. Delgado's flashlight beam caught the edge of an overturned chair, a shattered glass, and a single bare footprint trailing toward the kitchen. His partner, Officer Kinsey, called out, "No response." Then, from somewhere upstairs, a faint buzzing sound. It wasn't a phone, it was an electric toothbrush left running in an empty bathroom sink. And on the mirror, drawn in the condensation, 3 words stood out, like a whisper from the dark. "We were wrong." Detective Laura Hendricks arrived 20 minutes later. She was known for her precision, sharp suits, sharper instincts. The moment she stepped through the door, she clocked the pattern of the cleanup. Someone had wiped surfaces, but not the undersides. Whoever did it wasn't thorough. They were hurried. The victim, 43-year-old Evan Laird, was found in the study, slumped against his desk. No forced entry, no struggle, except for a single bruise on his right wrist. Toxicology would later confirm a sedative in his system, enough to keep him still, not enough to kill him. The fatal wound was a single puncture beneath the jaw, precise, surgical. But what disturbed Hendricks more than the method was what wasn't there: the victim's laptop. Evan Laird had been a behavioral psychologist consulting for a local law enforcement training center. His wife, Mara, was out of town at a wellness retreat. Or so she claimed. When Hendricks called, Mara's voice trembled, but not from shock, more from calculation. She didn't ask what happened to her husband. She asked if they had taken anything. By dawn, the scene was sealed. The forensics team swept for prints, hair, anything. Laird's study was lined with books, criminology, ethics, case studies, all neatly alphabetized. One stood out: The Anatomy of Betrayal, spine cracked open, with a sticky note inside reading, "Friday, 11:45, record everything." Hendricks checked the timestamp on the security system. Footage between 11 and 2 was missing. Not deleted. Physically removed. The hard drive enclosure had been pried out. It was deliberate. Outside, as technicians photographed tire impressions on the driveway, a neighbor, Mrs. Sloan, shuffled out in a robe. She said she'd seen Evan talking to someone in a gray sedan earlier that evening. A woman, she said, dark coat, short hair, looked angry. When Hendricks showed her a photo of Mara, the woman frowned. No, not her. Younger, maybe 30. A new variable. Hours later, back at the precinct, Hendricks reviewed the file with Detective Ryan Cale, her partner. Cale was pragmatic, blunt, and impatient with puzzles that didn't bleed straightforward answers. "Let me get this straight," he said, rubbing his temples. "Guy works with cops, has access to behavioral files, gets killed cleanly, no forced entry, wife's out of town, missing footage, and you think it's not personal?" Hendricks didn't answer. She was staring at a printed transcript from a recent voicemail on Laird's phone. "You said you'd make it right. You said you'd stop using it. If this gets out, it's not just your career, it's all of us." The voice was female, calm, composed. No caller ID. Then came the second message, time-stamped an hour before the 911 call. "You left me no choice, Evan." The first crack in the timeline came when the digital forensics team traced an encrypted login from Laird's home router to a police database server the night he died. Files related to Project Meridian, a psychological evaluation program quietly used by several police departments to screen recruits for aggression thresholds. Except, the program had been suspended 6 months earlier after an internal whistleblower claimed data manipulation, scores altered to pass candidates flagged as high risk. And the name on the whistleblower complaint? Evan Laird. By mid-afternoon, Hendricks and Cale tracked down one of Laird's former colleagues at the training center, a data analyst named Jenna Cross. She met them at a coffee shop near the river, jittery and chain-smoking. Evan was terrified, she said. He told me someone inside the department was using the evaluation results to target specific recruits, those with violent tendencies. Said it was part of some corrective behavioral pilot. But when he tried to report it, they shut him down. "Who's they?" Hendricks asked. Cross looked around before whispering, "He didn't say." But he started recording every meeting. He kept backup somewhere, not on his laptop. Where? He never told me. He just said, if anything happens, check behind the second door. Cale frowned. What door? Cross stubbed out her cigarette. That's all he said, behind the second door. That phrase gnawed at Hendricks the entire drive back. Laird's house had 2 visible doors, the front and the side entrance to the garage. But something in the architecture sketch on the property record caught her eye. A third structure, an enclosed laundry room with an internal door leading to a narrow crawl space. Back at the scene, she found it, hidden behind a false drywall panel near the washer. A padlocked door, painted the same color as the wall. When they forced it open, the air that rushed out was damp and metallic. Inside, a single metal chair faced a camera mounted to the wall. On the floor, a microphone wired to a portable recorder still blinking red. Cale crouched beside it and hit playback. At first, just static. Then a voice, Evan's. "If you're hearing this, it means they found me. It's not who you think. It's not just one of them, it's all of them. They're watching the watchers. You can't—" A loud knock in the background. Evan's breathing quickens. "She's early. Tell Mara I—" The recording cuts off. Cale stared at the recorder, then at Hendricks. "She's early?" Hendricks nodded slowly. He expected her. "And if Mara is supposed to be away?" They turned toward the open door, realizing the implication at the moment. Mara Laird wasn't on a wellness retreat. She was the woman in the gray sedan. And she was still missing. When they dusted the inside of the hidden room for prints, they found only one clear set, on the camera mount. They didn't belong to Evan. They belonged to Detective Laura Hendricks.
The lab report hit Hendricks's desk at 8:17 a.m. Her prints, clear as day, on the camera in Evan Laird's hidden room. Cale read the summary twice before looking up at her. "You want to explain this, Laura?" Hendricks didn't answer immediately. She knew what the evidence implied, that she had been in that room, that she'd tampered with the device. But she hadn't, or at least she didn't remember ever stepping foot in there. "I've never been in that house before last night," she said quietly. Cale exhaled hard, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Then how the hell are your prints inside the murder scene?" She didn't have an answer, but she had a hunch. The captain's voice cracked like gravel across the precinct. "Hendricks, you're off the case until forensics clears this. Internal affairs will take over." Cale tried to interject. "Sir, she's the only one who's been following the data trail. Pulling her now, not a discussion," the captain snapped. "Effective immediately." The room went still. Hendricks stared at the file on her desk, Evan's photograph paper-clipped to the corner, his eyes pale and knowing. She gathered her notes, every instinct screaming that walking away would be a mistake. So she didn't. By noon, Hendricks was parked 2 blocks from the Laird residence, engine off, rain streaking the windshield. The patrol unit rolled off for shift rotation, then slipped through the back fence with a flashlight and a copy of the property's blueprints. The first place she checked wasn't the hidden room. It was the study, where the blood had pooled by the desk. She crouched, tracing the pattern of droplets, the angle of the impact. There had been movement after the wound. Someone had tried to drag him toward the safe embedded in the wall. It was open now, but she remembered it being sealed the night before. Inside, she found a single flash drive tucked behind the hinge. She pocketed it and left through the side door before anyone noticed. That night, Hendricks sat in her apartment, blinds drawn, laptop glowing faint blue. She plugged in the drive. The folder structure was clinical, Meridian revised, behavioral pilot, audit logs. Then a single document stood out. Case Eval 2031LH. Her initials. When she opened it, her stomach dropped. The file contained her psychological evaluation from years earlier, aggression, trauma resilience, empathy score, all falsified. The original scan had been tampered with. Her aggression threshold was listed as elevated, the kind of profile that under Project Meridian would have disqualified her from detective duty. Someone had raised her scores instead of lowering them. Someone had kept her in the field. And at the bottom of the file in the digital signature section was the name. Evaluator, Dr. Evan Laird. Cale called just as she was processing what she'd seen. "Where the hell are you? IA is asking questions I can't answer." "I found something," Laird said. "He ran my psych eval years ago. He altered it." "Altered it? Why?" "I don't know, but he was blackmailing someone inside Meridian, and I think whoever he threatened made sure he couldn't talk." Cale was silent for a long time. Then, "You're saying the same people who hired us are behind this?" "I'm saying the program wasn't about screening bad cops. It was about creating them." The next morning, Hendricks met Jenna Cross again, this time at a parking lot behind a shuttered motel. Cross looked like she hadn't slept. "They found me," she whispered, eyes darting. "They took my laptop. My credentials are revoked." "Who?" Hendricks pressed. "The task force. Meridian never shut down. They went private. Data is still being sold to recruitment agencies, military contractors, even private security firms. Laird had proof. That's why they silenced him." Cross handed her a folded page, an address scribbled in pencil. "He told me if anything happened, the backups were stored there, Old Industrial Park near Clearwater, Unit 19B. Hendricks hesitated. "How do I know this isn't a setup?" "You don't," Cross said flatly. "But if you want to know why your prints were at that crime scene, you'll find out there." Clearwater Industrial Park was a graveyard of empty warehouses. Rusted signage, broken glass, silence thick enough to hear your own heartbeat. Hendricks parked behind a truck and approached the labeled unit, 19B. The lock was snapped. Someone had already been here. Inside, dust motes floated through the dim light slicing in from the cracked roof. A folding table sat in the middle, covered with old police files, photographs, and a disassembled hard drive. Then she saw it, a photo of herself, taken during a training exercise 3 years ago, her name circled in red ink. Next to it, controlled variable, and beneath that, another line. Subject displayed consistent detachment from emotional stimuli, recommend exposure escalation. She felt the chill run up her spine. They hadn't just altered her file, they had been testing her. A sound echoed behind her, footsteps on gravel. Hendricks drew her sidearm, crouched low. "Laura?" It was Cale. His jacket was soaked, his expression tight. "You followed me?" "I had to. IA is convinced you're hiding something, and now I see why." He gestured at the table. "What the hell is this?" "Evidence," she said. "Meridian wasn't a psych program. It was an experiment, monitoring behavioral responses under pressure. Laird uncovered it. He was going to leak everything." "Then why your prints on the camera?" She hesitated. "Because I was part of it." Cale blinked, confused. "Not by choice," she added. "They monitored me through every major case. They wanted to see if I'd crossed the line when pushed fair enough." Cale stared at her like she was unraveling. "You're telling me someone's been manipulating cops to see who cracks? Not just manipulating, designing." Suddenly, headlights flared through the broken window. A car pulled up outside, engine humming. Hendricks and Cale ducked behind a column. A woman stepped out, umbrella in hand. Mara Laird. She moved with confidence, scanning the room before speaking. "You shouldn't have come here, Detective." Hendricks rose, gun still drawn. "You lied about the retreat."
Mara smiled faintly. Of course I did. Evan wasn't supposed to go public. He couldn't live with what he did to you, to the others, but his guilt made him reckless. What others? Every recruit they flagged as unstable, every officer they corrected. You think they just deleted those evaluations? They rewrote them, made sure the ones with the right profile, fearless, detached, obedient, stayed in uniform. Cale's voice was low. And Laird helped them? At first, Mara said, until he realized what they were doing wasn't fixing anyone, it was conditioning them. Hendricks felt her pulse pound in her ears. Where's the rest of the data? Mara's eyes softened. Gone. But you already know that. You deleted it yourself. What? You were their most successful test subject, Laura. They needed to know if the conditioning would hold under trauma. Evan's death was the final phase. Hendricks shook her head, stepping back. You're lying. Mara's expression turned cold. Am I? She pointed to the table. Look at the timestamp on your psyche val. You signed off on it 6 weeks ago. Hendricks snatched the page, eyes scanning the bottom line. Digital signature, timestamp, her name. Cale read over her shoulder. That's impossible. Is it? Mara whispered. They never stopped watching. They're still watching now. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. Hendricks took a last look at Mara's calm face and the stack of evidence that shouldn't exist. Who are they? She demanded. Mara exhaled slowly. You'll find out soon enough. The question is, will you still be you when you do? Before Hendricks could move, Mara dropped a flash drive on the floor and stepped back into the rain. When Hendricks picked it up, a line of text appeared across its label. Do not open until you're ready to remember. Minutes later, as Hendricks and Cale drove away from the warehouse, she inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The folder inside was labeled Subject LH Recordings. The first file opened to a video, grainy surveillance footage from a week earlier. It showed Detective Laura Hendricks standing inside Evan Laird's hidden room, holding the same camera, pressing record.
The video did not begin with a face. It began with the frame of a chair, the edge of a microphone cable, the blink of a red light reflected in a stainless steel washer. A woman's hand entered the shot and steadied the camera. Laura knew the freckle near her thumb before the rest of the truth arrived. She watched herself sweep the lens, make a small adjustment, and check the recorder. Her mouth moved. The audio was muffled at first, then a second mic synced and her voice came in, clean and even. Room's clear. Phase 2 in 5. Cale drove with one eye on the road and one on her. What's Phase 2? Laura didn't answer. On the screen, the door to the hidden room opened. Evan stepped in, pale and shaking. He wasn't cuffed, he wasn't forced. He looked at Laura and whispered, "You said it would be private." "I said it would be controlled," her recorded self replied. Evan sat. Off camera, a second voice spoke. Male, calm. A cadence Laura knew like muscle memory. "Agent, begin the script at section 4. Cale's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. "Play that again?" Laura rewound 5 seconds. The voice was unmistakable the second time. Detective Ryan Cale, stripped of the casual edges he wore at the precinct, giving a cue like it was nothing more than procedure. They pulled off the highway into a service area, rain drumming the roof, wipers ticking like a metronome. Laura let the footage play. Her recorded self laid a folder on the table, slid pages toward Evan, kept her tone neutral. "You altered meridian scores, names, dates, signatures." Evan stared at his hands. It wasn't about passing bad cops. It was to keep an eye on them. You don't know what it's like to see a pattern and be told to pretend it isn't there. "Who told you?" Evan flinched at something outside the frame. "You." The camera trembled slightly, as if the person behind it had taken an involuntary step. Laura felt the echo climb up her spine. Cale paused the video with a jab. His voice was low. "What is this, Laura?" "You tell me," she said, not taking her eyes off the frozen image of herself. He looked like he wanted to deny it, to turn it into some failing in the audio or a glitch in the file, but the truth sat between them, dense and airless. He put the car in park and faced her. You were part of an internal intervention team, off book. We called it compliance. Laird was slipping data to a reporter. We were supposed to confront, not coerce. You volunteered because you had rapport from previous consults. You insisted on a recording for chain of custody. Laura laughed once, a humorless sound. And my evaluation? My signature? You were flagged as resilient. You could hold the line when others snapped. Meridian tagged you as an anchor. Someone had to sit across from the people who broke policy and get them to put it back. By sedating them? Cale swallowed. The rain got heavier. The car felt smaller. It was supposed to be mild. Enough to keep a conversation from turning into a brawl. You knew that. I don't remember knowing that. He stared past her at the streaming glass. That was the part they didn't brief me on. Laura pressed play. On the screen, a mug of tea appeared in Laura's hand. She set it near Evan and did not touch it herself. Off camera, Cale's voice murmured timestamps and notations. Evan's eyes drifted as the minutes passed. When he finally spoke, words spilled out heavy and unguarded. They're going to use it. Not to fix the wrong hires, to seed the right temperaments. Private contracts need numbers. Numbers need volatility. They want officers who won't ask why the same neighborhoods are always on fire. Laura, the video Laura, kept her face still. Names. Evan glanced at the door. I left them in the safe. Where? Behind the second door. The footage ended abruptly and static. Laura clicked the next file. It opened to a fixed shot of the hallway. Timestamp 1:43 a.m. Evan walked toward the laundry room with Laura behind him. Off frame, a shadow moved past the kitchen threshold. The angle cut again. Evan framed in the hidden room doorway, Laura's shoulder in the corner of the image, and the red light blinking. Then a third figure entered. Short hair, dark coat, purposeful gait. Not Mara, younger, Jenna Cross. Jenna's chin lifted toward the camera, like she could see the lens. She placed a small zip case on the floor and towed it toward Evan. He didn't run, he didn't scream, he looked at Laura like the scene had already ended. We shouldn't, Laura's on-screen voice said quietly. Jenna didn't look at her. You started it. The image jumped, the way a recording jumps when a hand trembles. Jenna stepped behind Evan and reached up. Laura couldn't see the weapon, only the steadying of Jenna's shoulders and the way Evan's head tipped back, mouth opening around a sound that never formed. The screen went black. Cale killed the ignition, the car suddenly silent but for rain. This is edited, he said. I opened the third file. A short clip, 12 seconds, shot from waist level, of a hand removing a hard drive cartridge from the security system enclosure. The hand wore nitrile gloves. It reached out, braced itself on the camera mount. When it withdrew, the glove snagged and peeled back for a fraction of a second. The fingerprint left behind was clean. Laura's. She sat very still. The final file had no video, just audio, recorded in the study. Evan's voice, thick with sedative. Jenna's, crisp and efficient. And a third, Cale's, closer to the microphone than either of them. Confirm. Subject has provided location of backups. Confirm. Secondary subject secured. Copy. No further involvement from agent. Cut her out of chain. Laura shut the laptop. Why? She asked him, looking at him. Why put my prints on the mount? Because you insisted we record. Because you were the only one who still believed evidence mattered. We didn't know the recorder was wired to the housing. You steadied it. That's all. It's not all, she said. You cut me out. You cut my memory out too. Cale's jaw flexed. You've lost pieces before. After shootings, after bad scenes. They built on that. A little nudge, sleep deprivation, a dose too strong, stacked briefings that bend together.
You wanted clean lines, they gave you fog and told you it was weather. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. A text preview slid across the screen. Unit 19B. Now, come alone. Laura opened her door to the wet night. Where are you going? Cale asked. To get the names, she said. He reached for her arm. Don't. You don't know who's waiting. She met his eyes. I do. Clear water at night looked like a memory pretending to be a place. She parked where she had earlier and walked with her shoulders squared against the rain. The lock on 19B was new. She picked it with fingers that remembered habits from a decade she rarely talked about. Inside, the table was gone. In its place, a chair, a camera, a microphone. The lens blinked alive as she entered. Close the door, a voice said. Mara Laird stood from the shadows, no umbrella now, hair plastered to her face. She looked smaller without the controlled poise, but her eyes burned clean. You brought the drive? Laura asked. She lifted a clear evidence bag. Inside, a paper ledger, edges warped with damp. No screens, no passwords, permanent ink. They used paper for the real names, Mara said. Insurance against hacks. Evan kept a copy. He thought the old ways would save the truth. You gave me the flash drive, Laura said. You wanted me to see myself. I wanted you to understand who you are in their eyes, not a detective, a tool. Laura stepped toward the chair and looked into the lens, seeing the tight oval of her face trapped in the glass. Where's Jenna? Mara's mouth thinned. Gone. They rotate the field agents fast, easier to erase their fingerprints when a story goes wrong. Cale, Laura asked. The question hung like an exposed wire. Mara didn't answer. She slid the evidence bag across the concrete. Laura crouched, opened it, and saw a list of not just officers, but captains, union reps, contractors, liaisons, dates, transfers, settlements. Names of the people who made volatility into a business plan. A knock startled them both. The warehouse door opened without force. Cale stepped inside, gun lowered, badge visible, hair dripping. His face was complicated, fear and something like relief. Put it down, he said gently. Mara backed toward the wall. If you take it, they bury him twice. Laura didn't set the ledger down. She held Cale's gaze and spoke carefully. You knew this existed. He nodded once. I tried to burn it before anyone got hurt. I failed. You didn't try, Mara said. You followed orders. He ignored her. Laura, listen to me. If you walk out of here with that, IA will make you the story. They already have your prints, your voice, your presence on a compromised scene. There's no truth wins ending here. You're asking me to let it die, she said.
I'm asking you to survive long enough to do more than one thing, he replied. Take a photo of each page, hide the original, let me turn in a copy that names the dead and the retired and leaves the living to make mistakes we can actually put cuffs on. If we trigger all of this now, they'll salt the earth. Mara laughed, a tired, angry sound. He's not your partner, he's your handler. Laura looked at the lens again and saw the simplest arithmetic of her career. Motives, methods, outcomes. She made a decision without saying it out loud. She moved closer to Cale and held the ledger out as if to hand it over. His eyes flicked down, his hand rose. Laura stepped into his space and hit record on her phone, screen black in her palm. You authorized sedatives off book, she said, voice steady. You cut me out of chain. You ran Jenna. You signed the debrief that turned a confrontation into a killing. Cale's face flinched like she had reached in and touched bone. He didn't deny it. He looked at her phone, then at the camera behind her, then at the ledger, and whatever calculation he made showed in the way his shoulders loosened. I did what I was told, he said softly. So did you. The door banged open a second time. Two men in plain clothes stepped in, the kind who never wore uniforms and never needed to. One of them held a warrant. The other held a quiet kind of violence in his jaw. The captain followed, rain on his coat, eyes narrowed. "Captain Hendricks," he said in a voice that belonged to press conferences, "put the book down." Mara lifted her hands, furious and trembling. Laura didn't move. She looked at Cale, then at the captain, and recognized the geometry she'd been orbiting for years. She tore a sheet out of the ledger. Only one, and palmed it, then handed the rest to the captain. He passed it back without looking, already an artifact, already half buried. The captain turned to the camera and smiled, a politician's smile. "Chain of custody restored," he said for the record. "Not quite," Laura murmured. They searched them, took the flash drive, took Laura's phone. They missed the folded page she'd slipped into the lining of her jacket sleeve, taped there by reflex. They left her with a warning and a suspension and a hollow that wasn't shock anymore, just space where something used to be. 3 weeks later, the story the city heard was simple. An off-book sting gone wrong, a consultant dead by his own panic, an officer reassigned pending review. The ledger never surfaced. IA closed the file with a statement about ongoing reforms. On a Sunday morning, a small envelope slid under Laura's apartment door. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. A recruit class standing in front of a brick building, smiles stiff, uniforms new. On the back, a stamped red circle around one face and a typed line, "Next anchor placed." Below that, another line in black ink, handwriting she recognized from labels and sticky notes, and a hidden confession in a hidden room. "You weren't wrong. You were early. E." Laura sat at the table and laid out the torn ledger page she'd saved. It held 9 names and a schedule of transfers that didn't look like chance. She dialed a number she had never written down but had always known. When the voice answered, she didn't say hello. "If I send you something, will you keep it alive when they try to kill it?" The reporter on the other end took a breath. "Only if you understand what that costs." Laura looked at the photograph again, at the recruit with the red circle around his face, at the brick, at the sky cut into rectangles by distant wire. "I do," she said. She slid the page into a scanner. The machine hummed, slow and inevitable. Outside, sirens threaded the morning. Somewhere in the city, a camera blinked to life in a room that looked like another, and another, and another. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what they're still not releasing.